Let's imagine for a moment that the floodgates have opened. 6 million pages of documents just released, giving us an unprecedented look into the world of Jeffrey Epstein. And what they reveal? It's not just one man's depravity. No, it's the detailed blueprint of a modern criminal empire. Today, we're going to dissect that machinery, piece by painful piece.
You know, if you really want to understand the crimes, you have to follow the money. As one forensic analysis put it, the money wasn't just part of the story, it was the core indispensable component. The trafficking, the abuse, that whole web of power, it was all fueled and protected by a brilliant, dark financial architecture, built specifically to operate in the shadows. And it all began with an image.
So let's start by peeling back the first layer of this whole enterprise, its glittering public facade. This was a world of unbelievable wealth, of intellectual prestige, and unparalleled connections. A carefully constructed web with a master at its center.
You see, Jeffrey Epstein didn't just present himself as a wealthy man. He presented himself as a genius, a visionary who could talk high finance one minute and theoretical physics the next. And that persona? Well, that was his golden ticket. It got him into rooms and circles where money was common, but intellect? That was the ultimate currency.
And the access that persona bought was just staggering. The files confirmed he was this central hub, connecting completely separate worlds of power. You had presidents and princes, Nobel laureates and Hollywood stars. He brought them all together. This wasn't just a list of contacts, it became a kind of armor, a shield that protected him long after the world started to learn about his crimes.
And at the very heart of this network was his own private kingdom, Little St. James. Now this was so much more than a luxury getaway. It was a perfectly controlled environment, totally isolated from the outside world. A place where secrecy was everything. A place where that glittering facade could finally come down and the dark reality could begin.
Because beneath that surface, the files lay bare the cold, operational mechanics of the criminal enterprise itself. An international sex trafficking ring that methodically preyed on the young and the vulnerable.
Those are the words of Virginia Giuffre, and they cut right to the heart of the operation's core tactic. Trust wasn't a bond, it was a weapon. And vulnerability wasn't something to be comforted, it was an opening to be ruthlessly exploited.
The whole method was chillingly systematic. Elite social settings were turned into hunting grounds. From Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club to prestigious arts programs, Epstein and his key partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, targeted and groomed young women by exploiting their dreams. They took places of aspiration and turned them into traps.
And let's be very clear about Ghislaine Maxwell. She was no mere assistant. Forensic accounting shows she was a highly paid partner in this enterprise. She received over $31 million through JP Morgan accounts for her role as the chief recruiter and facilitator.
Now, this entire criminal operation was built on an equally complex financial foundation, an architecture of deceit designed for one single purpose: to move huge sums of money while staying completely invisible to the law.
Over $1 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the staggering amount that just two of the world's biggest banks, JP Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank, processed for Epstein. And this wasn't just his personal piggy bank. This was the operational capital. This was the money that paid for the jets, the islands, the lawyers, and for the silence. So how do you hide that much money? You build a labyrinth, a maze of at least 34 shell companies and trusts, all created just to obscure who owned what and to launder the funds. And you'll notice, most of them were based in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a jurisdiction known for its secrecy, which Epstein exploited to the fullest, especially after he was a convicted sex offender.
There's a technical term for this strategy. It's called jurisdictional arbitrage. Really, it's just a sophisticated shell game. You move assets and companies between different legal jurisdictions, places like Delaware, New York, the Virgin Islands, all to exploit loopholes and create a financial maze so complex that it's nearly impossible for investigators to navigate.
But here's the crucial part. This wasn't happening in total secret. The banks saw the red flags. I mean, they were everywhere. Patterns of cash withdrawals designed to fly just under the reporting radar. Direct payments to women later identified as victims. Payments to known co-conspirators. They even saw payments for victims' college tuition. And for years, all these warnings were documented inside the banks, but the billion-dollar relationship, it just kept going.
This financial impunity, well, it was mirrored by a legal one. This enterprise didn't just exploit financial loopholes. It thrived because at the most critical moments, our system of justice completely failed to hold it accountable. And the most infamous example, of course, is the 2008 non-prosecution agreement. You had local police who built a powerful case with multiple victims. But then a federal prosecutor named Alexander Acosta secretly negotiated a deal that shut down the entire federal investigation and granted immunity to Epstein and his co-conspirators. The victims, they were never even told. It was a profound failure of justice.
And this same gap between policy and reality existed inside the banks. On paper, their policies were perfect. They had robust protocols to fight financial crime, but internal documents show the reality. They maintained a highly profitable relationship long after their own compliance teams were raising hell about clear evidence of trafficking finance.
And the opportunities to stop him came so much earlier. Back in 1996, more than a decade before that sweetheart deal, a victim named Maria Farmer went to the FBI. She told them Epstein had stolen photos of her underage siblings. The files confirm it. And what happened? Nothing. No investigation was ever conducted. It was a pattern of institutional failure that went on for decades.
Epstein's death in 2019 didn't end the story. Not even close. Instead, it just triggered this chaotic, incomplete reckoning. And that all culminates in the massive document release we've been talking about. Over 6 million pages. The sheer volume of data released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act was just staggering. And it came with a promise. For the first time, we'd get a full accounting of the entire network and all its enablers.
But that promise of transparency, it was challenged almost immediately. An independent audit found that a huge portion of the files was just junk. Meaningless filler, like blurry photos of clouds. And critics started to argue that the most crucial information, especially about powerful people, was still being hidden. That this wasn't transparency at all, it was a distraction. Still, what the files do make crystal clear is the vast network of professional enablers who made it all possible. His assistant, Leslie Groff, is mentioned over 157,000 times. His accountant, over 52,000. His lawyer, nearly 18,000 times. Yet aside from Epstein and Maxwell, virtually no one else in this huge network has ever been criminally charged.
So the Epstein Files give us this chilling anatomy of a criminal enterprise built at the crossroads of wealth, power, and systemic failure. They show us not just what one man did, but how our own systems allowed it to happen, again and again. And with so much of the truth still buried in the shadows, the one question that remains is this. When the powerful can operate above the law, what is the true price of impunity?